Hey guys, it's towniesimbuilds here, and welcome back to another speed build. Now I'm crossing my fingers because this should be the final build of 2023, so hopefully this does make it before the end of the year. But of course, I did want to go big, and I did want to create something that I really enjoyed. So as you can tell from the title of today's video, this is the 𝗧𝗛 family home from Disney's 1998 film Mulan. And I did want to squeeze this in just before the year ended because the film is celebrating its 25th anniversary. So I thought this build was very fitting to honor the film. And honestly, you guys, it was kind of a tricky build. In The Sims 4, we don't really have anything that's specifically Chinese. Of course, with The Sims 3 World Adventures, we had a lot of objects that would have been very fitting for this build. But I did choose this particular lot in Mount 𝗪𝗡, and I think it's actually the biggest lot we have in this world. So unfortunately, if you guys do want this build, it may take up some precious real estate, but I really do hope you guys enjoy it. So this build is actually inspired by a true historical build style that I do believe is called a 𝗧𝗛𝗛𝗡. So this was a type of architecture in ancient China, and I do believe the word roughly translates to courtyard. So obviously, if you've seen the movie Mulan, their house is pretty big. You can say the 𝗧𝗛 family is pretty wealthy. So there is a large courtyard area in the center, and it is surrounded by both walls and also 3 structures as well. So you can see I did a lot of the exterior walls first, and then I started constructing the interior of their courtyard. Now, I did make a little bit of a mistake. I actually connected the central building, which I call the temple per se, but I do correct that later on. But right now we're getting in all those details. I'm using some snowy escape columns. I do use, I think ultimately the snowy escape roof tiles as well. So you might see me switch in between a few different options, but I eventually settle, and I worked on a lot of those very tricky roof ornamentations as well. So hopefully those do translate. I'm adding some terrain paint now, which realistically is actually very sandy in the movie. There's a lot of soil and sand everywhere. But again, I'm adding in more details. I'm using some base game materials to create little bits of support beams, I guess. A little bit of roof decoration there. And honestly, you guys, thank goodness for the Realm of Magic pack. Like I said, we don't really have any specifically Chinese-inspired items, but I think these Realm of Magic windows really did the trick. And of course, going on the inner walls now, I do use a wallpaper texture from the Island Living pack. It was hard. I'll be honest with you guys, it was very hard getting that certain wood panel look that is in the movie. Unfortunately, with this being a limited pack build, I might have resorted to the sort of wood paneled walls from the Get Together pack, but I think these Island Living ones did the trick instead. I'm also working on a little bit of the landscaping. The courtyard itself is pretty barren. There are only small patches of grass and flowers, and it's specifically these little areas along the walls here. So I do recreate a lot of the stone or rock border pieces, I would say, and then there are very sparse bits of pink flowers there as well, pulling from the cottage living debug. I also use these very beautiful snowy escape spandrels, which you will see on the inside. I actually use them to create very ornate beds, because without them, you guys, I don't really know how they would have been possible. But anyways, we are currently working on the small stable towards the front of the courtyard, and this actually houses Mulan's horse named 𝗀. Now, I would say if you have the Horse Ranch expansion pack, I would hope this would be big enough. I did try to scale it approximately to how it looked like in the movie, but of course, if you do have the Horse Ranch expansion pack, you're more than welcome to tweak this area accordingly. It's a pretty simple area. It is a small barn, if you will, and I do believe in Mulan 2, there is room for 2 horses. So I think it is Mulan's horse and then also Shang's horse as well. Unfortunately, because I did not have the Horse Ranch pack, I didn't really have a lot of the appropriate materials, but we do have some hay there, and we do have some buckets as well, and of course some Island Living windows just to let some air in. Now, moving back to the outside, I am working on the landscaping now, and I think all of the materials here were mainly from the Island Living pack and then also the Snowy Escape pack, which honestly were a lifesaver. I really enjoy these flowers from the Island Living pack, And for some reason, I completely forgot they were part of the main game itself. So I was pulling from debug originally, but I did find the correct object in game. And now I'm just adding a few accent pieces from the Snowy Escape pack with these bamboo fences. I did use a screenshot from the Mulan 2 movie, so I was trying to recreate a lot of the foliage there. So you did see a lot of those really vivid sort of reddish purple flowers, and then a lot of smaller sort of daisy-like flowers in between. But of course, we're moving to the backyard now, and this obviously is a very iconic space, especially in the first film in the very beginning and very end. Mulan does have a lot of very powerful and sentimental moments here, but I'm currently working on the river itself and also the bridge. The bridge, unfortunately, you guys, I went through so many variations. I tried playing with possible debug bridges, but nothing quite fit. So I tried making the bridge out of some Snowy Escape pieces, mainly the white fence pieces, and I do think I got it fairly close. You guys did also see the magnolia tree, again, a very important area in the film. So as a quick note, I do end up changing the tree out. It wasn't really the right texture or color, so I do switch it out for another pink tree in the end. So hopefully that is more fitting. I do believe it is a cherry blossom or orchid tree in game, but it was fairly close to the magnolia tree in the movie. Now, of course, a super important part of the backyard is the family shrine. So I'm currently working on that right now, and I do think I got it fairly close. I will say getting the elevation was super tricky with managing the stairs and different stepping stones there. But I think the structure itself is fairly close to the one seen in the movie. So I will also note that creating the sort of gravestones or the steels, the family steels, that was also a very tricky component. We're not there quite yet in the speed build, but if you guys know, I think I did a little bit of research on the film, and as much as the animators did their research, unfortunately that was something that wasn't too characteristic of Chinese family shrines, but we will get into that in just a little bit. I'm currently finishing off the backyard with more beautiful Snowy Escape trees, and of course using a lot more of the debug foliage as well, going in and adding some nice soil textures with the soft brush. Anyways, we are circling back to the shrine, and like I said, this is not going to be completely accurate. I did use some of the sort of gravestone pieces, I would say, from the Snowy Escape pack, so I would believe these to be more Japanese appropriate or more accurate to Japanese culture, but I did also combine these with some gravestone pieces from cottage living as well. So hopefully it does sort of capture the vibe of the film, and of course I'm also making these shelves for the guardians as well. And I want to say, as a quick note, with family shrines, I'm personally not too familiar with them, but coming from Vietnamese culture, from my mom's culture, usually our shrines have a Buddha, we have pictures of family members. There is usually an offering of food, usually in the form of fruit, and then we also burn an incense while praying there as well. So, like I said, I can't really speak to the true accuracy of the animated Mulan's shrine in comparison to real Chinese shrines in real life, but hopefully that does provide some insight. You guys did see I also added the large statue that she passes by as well, and we do see her crying there in the film, very much in the beginning of the movie, so that was another detail I included. Usually they are in the form of food dogs, but the closest thing we have in game is a sort of Chinese zodiac pig statue, I guess I would say. So you will see that pop up quite a bit in this build. Anyways, I am blabbering on. We are on to what I would call the main temple, and this is the central structure within the Fa family home. Now, carefully going through many screenshots, I do believe this is where the armor is kept, so I did try to create a custom cabinet for it as well, which does deviate a little bit from the movie. This particular cabinet features the island living door, which in the movie is actually completely opaque, so there are no slats or openings, but I thought it was a nice touch so that if your Sims are in this house, you can actually see the armor through that particular window or door as well. Moving on, you guys did get to see the Fa family dining area, and unfortunately I had to do a little bit of cultural appropriation. The closest thing I could find in The Sims 4 was actually a Japanese kotatsu table, which of course is not completely the same thing, but it is a low-lying dining table, and of course features cushions for the different family members to use as well. The living room towards the left is my own creation. Unfortunately, we don't really see it in the film, but I did use a lot of objects from both the Island Living pack and also the Realm of Magic pack as well. Mainly just trying to stay within the aesthetic of the film. Now, moving to the right side of the courtyard, we do enter mainly Mulan's space. So this part of the house has Mulan's bedroom, a small bathroom, and also the supposed kitchen or garden-like shed, I would say. I'm not really sure what to classify it as, but what we do see in that part of the film, I do turn into a small kitchen. Mulan's bedroom is first, and this was a little bit tricky to do. We do have different views of her bedroom, both in the first Mulan or the original Mulan, and also Mulan 2. Now, I do want to warn you guys, this bed goes through a lot of changes. I flip-flop between the spandrels, I flip-flop between both the Island Living bed and the Snowy Escape bed, but I do think I got it fairly close, and for the most part, I was trying to reference the first film as much as possible. Her bed is actually quite interesting. I made it into a canopy-style bed, and of course, it does feature a lot of curtains as well, which I used from the Island Living pack. There are some other furniture pieces that I also try to mirror from the film, but unfortunately, not much of her room is shown. She does have some kind of dresser towards the back with a purple flower, and then also a smaller table with a candle and a small vase as well. Now, as a really fun homage to the beginning of Mulan, the original Mulan, I did include a few different objects toward the left. So we do have a dragon statue that represents Mushu, but most importantly, we also have the scrolls and ink that she uses. So that is when she is trying to prepare for the matchmaker, and she's very quickly trying to jot down some notes on her arm so that she can later cheat in her interview per se. So I thought having the scrolls and the ink were a really fun detail. But of course, we are moving on to the bathroom. And the bathroom, you guys, was super challenging. Obviously, we're supposed to be in the context of ancient China, so a lot of these modern amenities just don't make sense. But, you know, I was trying to keep within the theme. I used a lot of dark woods. I tried to choose objects that were a little bit older looking, even though these are certainly not fitting to the time frame. But one thing I did see actually were a lot of large wooden tubs, and this was something I saw both in ancient Chinese and Japanese culture. So at least with the tub itself, I would say it's a little closer. Obviously, it wouldn't have the modern fixtures, but overall, I was just trying to fit with the overall color and theme of the house and of the film itself. So it's a pretty cozy space. I do make use out of the Island Living dividers, and if you guys saw them in the bedrooms, they will serve sort of as privacy screens. We do have some screens that are similar to that in game, but unfortunately, I tried my best not to overlap certain cultures too much. Obviously, with things like Snowy Escape, the items are very heavily oriented in Japanese culture. So when I saw the shoji screens, I was very tempted to use them, but they just didn't quite fit for a Chinese aesthetic, if that makes sense. Moving on, this is a look at the kitchen, and we only see this very briefly in the first film. And like I said, I don't know if this was truly the Fa family's kitchen, but this was the closest reference I had. And if you guys remember from the original Mulan, she actually has a little dog named Little Brother, which, as a fun fact, the Little Brother, I do believe, is part of the original Mulan legend. But for certain reasons, they decided not to include this character in the film. So the little puppy or the little dog named Little Brother is a nod to that. But overall, I do want to warn you guys, this is a super cluttered kitchen. The shot that I did see in the film was very heavily detailed with lots of clutter on the walls, lots of pots, pans, sacks of hay or flour and seeds, hanging herbs. You name it, this kitchen certainly had it. But much like the bathroom, it was very tricky being historically accurate with this area. So again, I had to take a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of creative leeway here. Mostly from the ancient Chinese kitchens that I saw. Most of them were very stone-based, a lot of stone along the walls. A lot of ovens were also made out of stone. And the fixtures that were there, if they were wood, they were more of a dark wood, a little bit more on the rustic side, I would say. And I did see a lot of older tables in the center as well, probably for prepping foods and dishes just like this. So I'm adding in a lot of clutter, mostly from the Island Living pack and also the Cottage Living pack. And again, paying homage to the film, she does use Little Brother in order to feed the chickens. So she attaches a bone on a stick and he proceeds to run around the yard. And of course, with cottage living, we do have actual chicken coops. So it was perfect for the coop to be in the backyard, again, paying homage to the film. We now move on to the left side of the estate of the Fa family home, and we now enter the bedroom of Mulan's parents, which unfortunately we only see for a very brief period of time when Mulan, of course, is leaving in the middle of the night. Again, cutting her hair, she's taken on the armor, she took the family horse. It's a beautiful, very iconic scene that you guys probably remember. And we do see a look into their bedroom, but again, it is heavily obscured by the night. So this was very hard to kind of reinterpret. Again, I went back and forth a lot on the bed and the colors, but I do think the layout towards the window is fairly close. Now, there are some very interesting details in here as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have a flower hair clip to put on the dresser, but I did use an orchid flower from the Snowy Escape pack that was the same color as the flower on the comb itself. There was also this very cool dragon screen that flashes, especially when the lightning strikes in the film. So I did use a Japanese scroll artwork with a tiger on it as a sort of close match to resemble that in the movie. Other than that, I did have to use a lot of creative liberty on the rest of the room. We do have the lovely Snowy Escape dresser here, and of course repurposing more of the island living privacy screens. So these do appear in each of the different bedrooms, and like I said, they will offer some sort of private changing area for the different household members. We are moving on to the next bathroom now, and you can see I'm already in the midst of it because, of course, it's very similar in style to Mulan's bathroom, but it does have some different elements to it. I would say it's a little bit more complex than her bathroom. We do have a full countertop where the sink is, and of course we have many towels in this area. We do have, of course, Mulan's parents using this bathroom, but also Mulan's grandmother as well. So with that said, there are multiple robes. We do have her mother and father's robes on the right, and then her grandmother's robe on the left, and I did try to mirror their color palettes roughly from what I remembered. Moving on, we do have Mulan's grandmother's room, which we actually do not see at all in the film. But in the very iconic scene where Mulan leaves in the middle of the night, it is roughly down the hall from her parents' room, if I had to guess. But like I said, it was very difficult given that I had no references to use. So I did have to use my imagination here. I was mainly going off her color scheme, and overall I wanted to make this space very large, very roomy, and hopefully include some kind of reference to cricket, which I will say it's kind of a stretch. I don't remember if we had any insects that we could have in game, especially as pets, but more or less her room is very similar to the other rooms. It does have a canopy style bed with a lot of the ornate spandrels from the Snowy Escape pack. She does also have a privacy screen, but she also has this really nice sofa or futon from the Island Living pack as well. You guys did see I tried to place down another scroll object. If you guys remember, cricket was stored in a little tiny cage per se. I might go back and use a different object for the scroll instead. But yeah, I did my best. I couldn't really think of any way to pay an homage to cricket. But we do have some more scroll paintings here, and because of her inclination to lucky animals, I did include more animals there. And you know, at least the scroll painting of the cat has a small fly or flying insect around it, so perhaps that could be a nod to cricket. I think that's the closest thing I could find, unfortunately. But of course, we're just finishing off the room with some clutter. Of course, I am using my favorite base game shelf hack, just adding some towels or clothing and a lucky pig statue there as well. Finishing off the lot, I did see that there was a tree within the courtyard at some point in the first film, so it's definitely something I wanted to include. I'm just pulling a debug tree from the Snowy Escape pack with a nice sitting area also used in the backyard as well. Completing the lot now, I'm just adding a little bit of gravel in certain areas just to mark certain pathways within the courtyard itself. Alright guys, and that is a wrap on the Fa family home from Disney's Mulan. Just like always, please feel free to let me know if I did the build justice, and of course, if you have other suggestions for builds from movies, TV shows, or video games, please feel free to share them in the comments as well. On that note, this is still a no CC, no mod, limited pack build, and will be available on the Sims 4 gallery for download. I'll leave you guys now with the final lot specs, along with the final cinematic shots, so you can see how everything turned out in the end. And of course, just like always, this has been towniesimbuilds, signing off. Thank you so much for watching, guys.